So before we close, I want to give you a practical way to fulfill the Great Commission in your life. And I want to talk to you quickly about the greatest opportunity. The greatest opportunity that you and I have, most of us have, for fulfilling the Great Commission is going to be our children and our grandchildren. So the greatest opportunity that you personally are probably going to have to fulfill the Great Commission are your children and your grandchildren. I remember reading recently that the vast majority of people who become Christians when they're still young and living in their parents' house, when they're still kids living in their parents' house. And the older they get, the less likely a person is to convert to Christ. I mean, the percentage or the chance of someone converting and becoming a disciple of Christ diminishes the older a person gets. So a person is most likely to become a Christian and be discipled if we can reach them young. As a parent or grandparent, you have so much influence. And so let me give you a quick strategy for discipling your kids and grandkids. The first thing is set a clear goal. Set a clear goal. And here's a goal that I want to help you with. Here's a goal that I want to give you, is to see your kids committed to church after high school. Now that's a clear, tangible, measurable goal. Now, of course, we want to see our kids saved. And of course, we want to see our kids love Jesus. And we want them to be tithers in the church, be committed and things like that. But what's really measurable, easily measurable, is that our kids after high school are still going to church, still committed to church. Because the vast majority of kids today who are growing up in the church are leaving the church after high school. So when you graduate from high school, you reach a level of independence, and now your parents aren't bringing you to church anymore. They're not forcing you to go to church. And so now your kid has to make a decision. Am I going to wake up and am I going to drive myself to church and use my gas money and my time and my energy, or am I going to stay home and study? Or am I going to stay home and do yard work? Am I going to go out with friends? Or am I going to go to work? What am I going to do? Now I get to choose. And the vast majority of kids in America who grow up in church are dropping out of church after high school. So a very measurable goal for you is to have your kids committed to church after high school. Here's number 2, be a godly example. Be a godly example. And what I want to encourage you to do is to be the kind of Christian that you want your kids to be when they're adults. So do you want your kids to be committed to church? You've got to be committed to church. Do you want your kids to be tithers? You've got to be a tither. Do you want your kids to have a healthy, godly marriage? You've got to exemplify that. Do you want your kids to have godly character? You've got to exemplify that. So you cannot pass on a disease that you don't have. And you're not going to pass on the virus of Christianity to your kids unless you're genuinely infected. So make sure you're a godly example. And then number 3, strategy for reaching your kids and your grandkids. And I say grandkids because a lot of you are very heavily involved in the lives of your grandchildren. Some of you are raising your grandkids. Some of you see your grandkids often. And so you have a very, very unique opportunity. Here's number 3, get them involved in church. Get them involved in church. You want your kids to grow up and be able to tell people, I had a drug problem all growing up because my grandma drugged me to church every time the doors were open. So get them to church. And if you want them to be involved and to be committed to church after high school, then you better get them involved in church whenever they're still living with you at home. And so it's not enough, by the way, just to get them to church on Sundays. It's really not. You got to get them involved in home groups. You got to get them volunteering, get them tithing, teach them to tithe. They need to see that church is not an activity, it's an identity. That Christians don't go to church, they are the church. Church is such a huge part of their lives that it becomes their identity. Here's number 4. Help them build relationships at church. Help them build relationships at church. People only stick with a church if they build relationships with others in the church, significant relationships. It's just the way it works. I know that from being a pastor and from reading tons of books about church health, church growth. That's how people connect with a church and stick with a church. That's how you make your church sticky. People have to connect with others. So you've got to get your kids, if you want them to stick with church after high school, they've got to connect with others. And again, this is why Sunday mornings is just not enough. If the only time you come to church is on Sundays, your kids are not going to connect on a deep enough level for them to stick. And so you got to get them involved in home group. You got to get them involved in volunteering. So you volunteer and have your kids right there with you. Your kids will build relationships with the people that they're volunteering with. They'll build relationships with people at home group. Listen, it's not important that they develop relationships with people their age. That's cool. That's fun. It's important that they develop relationships with people in the church. It doesn't matter their age. It's good to have relationships with older people, younger people, but just that the church becomes their family, their extended family. So there needs to be a group of people in the church that they become very close to. I love to see when parents are having their kids volunteer with them, and it's cool to see. Mickey goes to home group and she brings Vonnie and Dwayne. They're right next to her, and they're building relationships with others in the church. And I know Kendra, her kids aren't here. They got in a wreck this weekend. I have to tell you more about that later. They're okay, but that's why they're not here. But she has Cameron that comes early Sunday mornings to help us set up, and he's building relationships with other people. Kendra, she brings all 5 of her kids with them. She and Sean to home group on Wednesday nights, where they're building relationships with people in the church. That's so essential. And then one more thing about how to reach your kids and grandkids is to teach them at home. Teach them at home. Teach them the Bible. There is no way that your kids are going to learn all that they need to know to follow Christ and be mature followers of Jesus by just what they learn at church. It's just not going to happen. So your kids, even in our church, we're family integrated. So we don't have Sunday school, we don't have youth group. But let me tell you something. Even if we had Sunday school for kids and youth group for youth, your kids wouldn't learn all they need to know about Jesus from those things. It's just not the way it works. It's not enough time. Your kids have all week with you. And so you need to devote your time at home to teaching your kids, discipling your kids to follow Jesus. And so what I encourage you to do is several times a week. For me, it's 3 times: on Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night, after dinner. My kids and I, we sit down for Bible time. And it's real simple, y'all. You don't have to be a seminary graduate. We read a chapter of the Bible and we pray. We read a chapter of the Bible and we talk about it, what it means. And the kids ask questions that I don't know how to answer. And so I'll say, I don't know, but I'll do some research and I'll get back to you on that. And you can do the same thing. With the internet these days, question comes up, what does that mean? And what about this? I don't know, but I'll do some research and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. But several times a week, read a chapter of the Bible or even a passage from the Bible and then pray together. What are your prayer requests? And disciple your kids at home. You've got to do that. If we can reach our kids and our grandkids, then maybe we could reach the world for Christ. But if we can't reach our kids and our grandkids, then we're not going to be able to reach the world. So it starts with those that are closest to us. That's our greatest opportunity.